Wednesday, January 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Bob Harris. This is the Football Diehards YouTube channel, and it's time to go on the hot seat. But first, FootballGuys.com is the website. Look, I did it right this time, people. That's where you'll find all my work right now. I appreciate you joining me here every Wednesday at this time. Also on Saturdays for my Ask Me Anything live streams. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, all the YouTube-y stuff that everyone demands of you. I'm doing the same. Demanding it, then like me or not. You can dislike me too, but you can't dislike my guest tonight. We have a fantastic guest on the hot seat, coming in hot at a fortuitous time. Gladys Louise Tyler, she's the host of the 2 Point Conversion podcast. Check that out on your X device at Going For Two Live, the numeral 2. Also a prodigious writer of fantasy football content as well. We'll talk about that too. And so when Gladys, hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? And
I'm
the cats.
Fantastic.
I'm always care about the cats.
The cats are fantastic as well. They're staring at me. Well, one's outside right now. The other one's staring at me from the landing. He doesn't like to come down. He likes the high ground.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Cats are funny like that. They like the high ground. But it was funny because when we were kind of discussing this a little bit before we came on, we were saying, well, what do we talk about? And you kind of threw out, coaching stuff. Oh, okay. Because there's some coaching stuff going on. We've got some people out in the chat, by the way. Hello, Albert. Good to see you. Always happy to see you, Jim. Good to see you as well. The lovely Mr. Scampers and Dame. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. Reasonably well, because the Chargers apparently are doing quite well. They've landed. That's the big headline, broke just before we showed up here to do this. Jim Harbaugh, the other Harbaugh, getting a job with the Los Angeles Chargers. Seemed like it was heading in this direction. Gladys, kind of your high-level thoughts on this at the moment.
I think that this is probably, other than Antonio Pierce, the best fit so far that we've seen of all the coaches, where the coaches could go and who's going where. I think that for once the Chargers have hit it out of the box on this one. Which I wouldn't say. I'm not a complete fan of this particular Harbaugh. I'm more of a fan of his brother, even though he's in the Steelers division. But I don't think they could have done better. I think this is the best outcome for Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert has suddenly vaulted up my next year redraft league. So, yeah.
Whatever we think of Jim Harbaugh and how he wins, right? Yes. 44, 19-1 during his 4 years with the San Francisco 49ers. He wins, then he gets weird, and then he leaves. And I'm fine with that. It's kind of like my MO for the most part. At least I leave after I get weird. Sometimes, Anyway, so look, we'll get into all that as well. I want to just welcome everyone in. I hope everyone's having a great time. Good to see you, Kevin. Toronto, Dave. Happy to see you. Dave loves the Harbaugh hire for the Bolts, but only love Pete Carroll more because he'd make them more relevant with LA people. Good point. Fair assessment there, Dave. And, I think that's a problem for the Chargers is like they're the 29th on the pecking order of what to do in Los Angeles, like about 7 below the Rams. Is that correct, Scamper's name? We'll see. And I agree with this, too. We're going to dig into the coaching ranks. And this one hit me today. Vrabel to the Panthers might be their only hope now that they've hired Dan Morgan as their GM. I mean, promoted from within, a former player, all good news. But he was part of the old thing, right? David Tepper is going to throw a drink on him if he's not careful. Before we get into all that, though, I wanted to just get quick takes on the games this weekend. These were the two teams, or my two Super Bowl teams are still in this, San Francisco and Baltimore. I don't know if they're going to be in this when the weekend is over. How do you think I'm going to do here, Gladys?
Baltimore, I think. Baltimore and the Lions, actually. The Lions were like my pick, but they've been my pick for the last 2 years to go to the Super Bowl.
I'm feeling more Lionish.
Yeah. I think the Lions have a fighter's chance more than people are giving them. Purdy did not look good. Like I don't talk bad about Purdy. I think he was Mr. Irrelevant and he's a good quarterback. But for that second half, the Packers outplayed him. love outplay Purdy for 3 quarters at least. And I think that the Aiden Hutchinson is just going to make his life miserable. And Detroit's secondary isn't that bad. I feel it's going to be Baltimore and Detroit. I maybe that's just because I hope it's Detroit, because I don't think we could ever have too much of Dan Campbell. But I think it's going to be Baltimore and Detroit.
I'm all about the my fellow Metallica fans. Rock on, Dan. Let's go bite a kneecap and whatnot. But I agree with you too. And Love did outplay him for 3 quarters minus 1 throw.
Yeah.
So that, but like they have a great array of skill players. I mean, everyone here in this chat knows my undying affection for Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs. I went back. Here's how creepy I am. I went back from at the expo, the Fantasy Football Expo.
Mhm.
I do always the big, the panel that opens the show, and they asked us to talk about, the player we were planting our flag on heading into the season, and I listened with rapt attention to my my entire thing about Jahmyr Gibbs being the guy that you had to draft. And thank you, Dan Campbell, for keeping him there, and Ben Johnson too. And we'll talk about Ben Johnson maybe heading away, here as well. But I'm kind of with you. I feel like this could be, a more of a Detroit game. The momentum seems to be on their side at least, and we'll see if Deebo Samuel plays. He's beat up and did not practice today. For Baltimore, Mark Andrews is working fully, so kind of like, I now don't feel comfortable. There's like 2 positions now in Baltimore that I feel entirely uncomfortable playing, which is the tight end is going to get chopped up, and the running back. I mean, how can you trust any of the 3 now? Because like as soon as I think it's going to be one of the others, Dalvin Cook is about to have a rebirth here in a purple uniform again, and do a Dalvin Cook like game. So are you comfortable with any of those positions? I feel like the only player I'm comfortable. I think they're going to win. I'm picking Baltimore. I'm sticking with that pick. I think the only player I feel comfortable with fantasy-wise, though, is Lamar, and maybe that's enough, right?
I think Lamar is enough. I actually like OBJ. I think that his MO is that big games, he's a big guy, and for them, it doesn't, until they get to the Super Bowl, it doesn't get any bigger than this game. I'm not playing any of the running backs in DFS, because I mean, who Gus Edwards, Justice Hill had the game last week. It's probably going to be Dalvin Cook this week,
right?
Who knows? And I think Jackson was responsible for like all 4 touchdowns. There's no way. I think I read something where Kansas City is like 28th in red zone reads and quarterback scrambles, like design quarterback scrambles, which doesn't bode well for them. I mean, Josh Allen had like 70+ yards and a touchdown on them. I see really good things for Lamar Jackson against the Kansas City, but
I think it's hard to see it any other way for me with Lamar. I mean, just like the rate he's playing with, he's the MVP, right? 4 total TDs, 100 rushing yards, and like, so the Andrews are likely kind of not being sure. I think I heard today. I think I heard John Harbaugh say that likely would probably still have a role. And so maybe Zay Flowers is a possibility. So, I mean, even with Andrews back, if you're going to kind of cap both of them, it's a little bit of a concern for me, or if one might limit the other, even if that's not how it plays out going into the game, not knowing that there are other tight ends I feel pretty comfortable playing this week, probably all of them, just to avoid that. Same with the running backs. If I could combine them all, if I could play team running back, maybe Baltimore. If I could play team running back and it included Lamar, then Baltimore team running back. I'm all about that. Yes, a lot of Harbaugh information pouring into my devices now. My watch is buzzing off my wrist. Hello, Andrea, in the house. I was waiting for you. How's the snow back there, Andrea? How are the feelings back there, Andrea? Stephon Diggs, kind of an interesting situation there. I kept thinking if they lose, we're going to see the blow up. Right? It's been 100. I mean, this was arguably his worst game of the year. I think it was 5.4 fantasy points. The last time he played the Chiefs, he got 6.8, and he didn't do a damn thing in that game. But we haven't seen him have a 100-yard game since week 6.
Right.
Gladys, Is I mean, it's easy just to say, oh, the change of offensive coordinators, but is it possible Stephon Diggs has lost a step? The Bills came out, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane both today, fully supportive. We haven't seen the blow up. I was expecting a blow up, the Stanford Diggs blow up after the fact.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah,
we allow that.
She's crazy. Stephon Diggs he hasn't been the number one wide receiver for quite some time. Like in PPR, he averaged for the year 16.1 fantasy points when the number one CD, of course, was like 23.7 fantasy points. He had like, I think 8 games where he wasn't getting throws past 5-yard line like they were doing the run. I don't know if it's Diggs losing a step or is it just how the offensive scheme is going with James Cook started getting better. But even before they changed offensive coordinators, I would be reticent to put Stephon Diggs as my wide receiver one. And again, I don't know if it's Josh Allen's Stephon Diggs thing or if it's just Stephon Diggs is losing a step. But them saying that he's their number one wide receiver, I think is a bit premature. Like, especially if they retain Gabe Davis, which I guess they're not going to since Stephon Diggs is their number one. Yeah, since Stephon Diggs is their number one. So, no. Stephon Diggs next year in redraft, I would be surprised if he went like top 10. Like, I wouldn't draft him.
Yeah, we did our first mock draft Monday on the Football Diehards radio program the other night. Had JV Calandro and Eric Frohoff on for the traditional kickoff. And I think Diggs was round 4. I'm going to say about wide receiver 15, outside the wide receiver 1 conversation. I probably felt like he was a value at 2, as a wide receiver 2, but I wasn't taking him. You weren't. I'm going to let somebody else be the hero there. On the Stephon Diggs rebound.
I don't see a path for him being a wide receiver 1 in that offense, especially with the emergence of Cook. If they decide to go, you have Cook and you have Josh Allen. I mean, if Gabe Davis is gone, Shakir clearly looked like he could take over a spot where they're going to throw the ball. I just don't see them being a pass-happy team, and which is also going to ding Stephon Diggs. But that he went 15th is kind of a surprise for me because that means
it was kind of a surprise. Well, I mean, we went pretty running back heavy early, I thought. So it was interesting, like it wasn't 15th overall; it was wide receiver 15th. I should stipulate. Yeah, he was down in he was down in round 4-ish or so. I could bring that up and double check, but yeah, it was like everyone was like, somebody's got to do it. Everyone's like kind of avoiding it. I don't want to have that one on me. So we'll see how that plays out over the course of the offseason. There comes a point, Gladys, with all these players when we, dial too far out. Here I come. Value, what? The old mean cheapskate in me just can't resist stealing somebody. And that's basically, look, he's not going to travel down to Nico Collins, Adam Thielen 2023 territory. He's not going to be your wide receiver 5. Like those guys were, but they aren't going to be. Well, Thielen might. Nico Collins is not going to be. No, not going to be. What did you make of Houston? Like so, and again, we're going to talk about the coaches, Bobby Slowick. I mean, with all the coordinator movement and all the unresolved situations going on, still a number of head coaching openings that some of these young coordinators might get. How concerned would you be if Bobby Slowick moved on from Houston for the continued development of CJ Stroud and that offense?
I think it would depend on who took his place, because Jalen Hurts has had 3 offensive coordinators.
Yeah,
and because Shane Steichen was such a good offensive coordinator, it didn't impact him as much as Justin Fields having 3 offensive coordinators. So I think it would depend on who the offensive coordinator is. I think I hope he doesn't go, but that's selfish because it would be a bump for him. But if he stays, CJ Stroud is that offense, especially if they get another wide receiver, or that offense would just be unstoppable.
Well, I think Well, Tank Dell back. By the way, Nico Collins went as a wide receiver 1 in that first mock draft. Tank Dell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a tail end of the ones. I want to say
Nice.
it was like right around wide receiver 12 or so. The thing about that we're all going to be talking about if let's say Slowick does somehow move on, Gerard Johnson, the quarterbacks coach, has a good relationship with Stroud. And then I think about that, and I think I heard that same thing about Brian Johnson in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
that puts me off a little bit, and I probably unnecessarily so. We're always trying to connect unconnected things in our minds to try and sort them out. But it is. I mean, I just think I think Slowick leaving would be a concern for me. So we'll have to see. By the way, Kelsey, no more number 1, no more. He's not a first rounder. He didn't go. I want to say he went in the 3rd round in this draft. He was the first tight end off the board in the 3rd round. How do you see Kelsey going forward?
He was the first tight end off the board.
He was the first tight end off the board, but it wasn't until round 3.
I think I heard someone say today that Andy Reid said Kelsey's finally got his legs back, and apparently he was injured. He played through some injuries that maybe he shouldn't have played through. But with the emergence of Laporta in Detroit, and I heard that Zach Ertz was in the building. I'm not even sure why Zach Ertz was in Detroit's building today. But with the emergence of Laporta and Kincaid, Kelsey drops for me. I don't see him as the number 1 tight end. Tight ends, they're so volatile. Like you had 3 tight ends who averaged like 14 fantasy points in PPR leagues, and then you drop to like 13, and then you drop to like 10. If you can get Hawkinson, if you can get Laporta, if you can get Kincaid, teams that are going to target their tight ends, although Minnesota, we have no idea what's going to happen there. Kelsey drops for me. That offense.
So I mean, he dropped out of the 1st round for me. I mean, I think your argument is fair. Like I might be more interested in Sam Laporta. I might like other pieces better at a cheaper price. But I mean, Kelsey's numbers fell off from Kelseyan levels. Right. He was still basically tight end 1. He's still what was his points per game? 14.8. He was number 1 in points.
Yeah, points per game.
Yeah. So led the position in points per game. Was right up there with Sam Laporta in total points. I mean, TJ Hawkinson could have probably outperformed everybody if he would have stayed healthy. But that aside, I just think the whole value thing, I think we're going to see 2 shifts, Gladys, and see if you agree with me. Number 1, tight ends are going to go later, and number 2, quarterbacks are going to go later.
I agree that tight ends are going to go later because I think that there is the feeling. There was always a feeling that tight end is that shallow pool. And I think the shallow pool has gotten deeper with the emergence of the first year and second year tight ends. Quarterbacks, I think that your legitimately dual quarterbacks will go early. Like, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to see a drop, but the Lamar Jackson, especially if he makes it to the Super Bowl and he has a good run, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, your legitimate dual threat quarterbacks, I see them going earlier than the average quarterback, than your pocket players.
Andrew likes Laporta and Trey McBride, another good piece in there. And Ertz did sign with the Lions. He was at team headquarters today. I heard Dan Campbell talk about it a little bit. Said he was, or one of the beat writers, who was it? One of the NFL Network reporters saw him walking around the facility and said he was looking good. So and I'm with you. Like, I think Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson are going to be, sorry, Patrick Mahomes, he'll shuffle down a little bit. But in our first mock draft, they went, I want to say the quarterback started in late round 3. It wasn't like you didn't see anyone sneaking into round 2 in this one. It was all late round 3 and beyond. But we've been, like, here's what happens on the radio show. Dempsey and I sit there and we talk each other into all kinds of nonsense over the course of a year. And we've kind of convinced ourselves that quarterbacks should go a little later. We're not all the way in late round quarterback mode, but it seems like, there's going to be some really good value. You look at some of the quarterbacks that rose up. Like, I'm going to be taking chances on guys. Like Anthony Richardson's a player I'm going to draft well ahead of ADP. And then I'm going to get one of those steady eddies way later in the draft in the double-digit rounds that can carry me through if something happens to him. But I think that's kind of what we've done is we've talked ourselves into the notion that since Patrick Mahomes didn't play out the way we wanted, we can dial back on everybody. Tell me how wrong I am.
I kind of like the chaos theory on quarterbacks that you have. Anthony Richardson, I forgot, but yeah, Anthony Richardson, if he comes back healthy, is also I like your strategy. Like Kirk Cousins, for whatever reason, always falls, and he's always steady. He's going to get you every year. He's going to get you those points, and he always falls to like the later rounds, which is ridiculous. So if your strategy is to, I like it. I mean, I'm not sure I would employ it on my own, although I do like chaos theory, but I like the idea that, I'm going to get Anthony Richardson, and then probably Kirk Cousins is going to follow me, or even Stafford will probably follow you, later rounds, and these guys are going to get you the double-digit 19, 20 points a game. So, it's a very valid theory.
That's what I'll be doing. So what will your approach be? Like as you sit here now, like a lot of things are going to change, and it's January 24th. I might have mentioned that at the top of the show. So nobody's drafting yet, other than idiots like me. So, but if you were an idiot like me, what would your approach be?
I do really weird things on redraft when I draft. Like I was thinking about this earlier because you kind of mentioned I would draft Hurts or Jackson. I would get a dual threat quarterback because I think that the wide receiver pool is pretty deep. I think that the running backs there's so many running backs that could go to another team this year that I want to see where they land. And there are so many running backs that could go with different coaches that I want to see if they stay where they land. So I'm not worried about the running backs. I don't subscribe to zero running back theory, but I'm more than happy to wait on a running back. So I would probably go quarterback, wide receiver, then a running back.
Yeah, look, here's like Jim Furry out there. Aaron Rodgers in the 7th or 8th round. How about Aaron Rodgers in the 10th or 12th round? I would like that way better. And it's like it's entirely possible because once you get through that range of super high end plays, all these Kirk Cousinses and that's the one that like I end up with the most. And by the way, he ends up like as a top 10 quarterback every single year. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Mark Jefferson.
I think that his average put him in like the top 10. Like if he had played the whole year, he would have been higher. But I'm almost positive that his average before, he averaged like.
Let me pull it up. I'm gonna get that.
I think I have it.
I have it too. If you don't.
Okay.
17. Let's go through the full season. Points per game.
1, 2.
He was 6. He was QB 6 in points per game.
19.3.
Yep. So
and he's like, and he went like late rounds. Jordan Love will probably go in the late round, and he's going to be steady.
Another one. I'm totally. We're totally on board here, and that's going to be my plan. I'm buying the lottery ticket early, and then I'm playing the steady Eddie later. It's like something I've been doing for 1,000 years now. The benefits of playing fantasy football, since the beginning of time. You learn the benefits of cheap quarterbacks. But Aaron Rodgers will probably be one. Like maybe not the ideal one for me. There are others I might prefer, but like thinking he finishes is a top scorer is not like outside the realm of possibility. Any of these guys. So I think the only one I'm not drafting is Danny Dimes. You fooled me enough.
Even if he's going to be like, you think I have a friend who's staunch. I have a couple of friends who are staunch Giants, and they're like anyone but Danny Dimes. I feel like that's what I like the hype train for Danny Dimes. I've both been I've been the engineer, I've been the conductor. Now I don't even want to hitch a ride in the box car at the end of that thing. I'm like, let somebody else do this. I'm gonna go on. Hey everybody, if you're just tuning in, I'm Bob Harris. From FootballGuys.com. You can find my work there, and you can hear me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. You can't do that tonight, but you can do it tomorrow night. I'll be on at 10 to midnight Friday, again 10 to midnight Saturday, 3 to 5 Mondays, 10 to midnight too. So 4 days a week still. We'll run that through the middle of February. Then we'll go to our off-season mode, which means Saturday shows. And so mock draft Mondays will come simulation Saturdays. See how we do this, Gladys? It's really easy. She is Gladys Louise Tyler. You can check her out on the Going for Two Live, the 2-point conversion podcast.
I can screw something up, I certainly will at some
It's
point.
fine.
And has been a guest on that radio show and done a fantastic job. What else are you producing out there, like in this time of year, doing anything over the off season, or you dial back and wait for the regular season?
Oh God, no! I don't dial back. I can't dial back. We do no particular order podcast, which actually is kind of like a mock draft on really crazy things. I'm still writing for Razzball. I will do defense, talk about defenses and defensive, and for going for two, I will talk about the new coordinators, both offense and defensive side. I kind of like off season more than I do the regular season, because I think more things happen that are more exciting once the regular season starts. You have fantasy football, but you have fantasy football, and off season you have Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers, and you have Antonio Pierce being you have all these great things. And who is he going to bring in for his OC? And if Vrabel goes to Carolina, who's going to bring it for the OC? Because that's going to matter for Bryce Young. And it's Justin Fields going to stay. There's like so much going on that the offseason is so great.
It's now the alter season. When I first started doing this, the off season was the time when I became the expert, right? I could sit here and study and nobody else was looking at anything. Now everyone else is looking at all the same stuff I'm looking at. And, I have to work twice as hard to sound like 1% smarter than everybody. And it's really irritating because it's a lot of work. So
it's working, because I think you are 5% smarter than everybody. So
Bill Belichick. Let's start here. We're going to talk. Wait a minute. Let's do a question first, because there is an interesting question out here. Not a lot of them. Who are the top 5 running backs for next year? I think it's a pretty easy selection for me, and it kind of played out that way in the draft that we did. So I don't know if you have initial thoughts here. I'll just throw mine out there, or if you want to sort yours out. Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Kyren Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson. Jonathan Taylor should probably be in there, but he's not yet. Where are you at?
In a strict up standard league or PPR? PPR, Christian McCaffrey, Kyren Williams.
I think that's fair.
Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, and Achane, or Achane, or whatever you pronounce your last name.
Achane. No, Achane.
Achane?
I've talked myself into 5 different pronunciations in the last 30 seconds.
Devon.
Achane.
I'm just going to
go. So I think, for me, Breece Hall should be locked. I'm with you. I think there's some people out there who aren't as sold on Kyren Williams. They have that same fear they had that, like, oh, wow, look what they did to Cam Akers last year. He was great down the stretch, and then they blew him off. Are they going to blow off Kyren Williams? I don't think so. There was a lot of history there with Cam Akers that does not exist with Kyren Williams, who was phenomenal, by the way. I think for me, like Christian McCaffrey, player and a half at his position, nothing changes there. Breece Hall, to me, looks like the guy who's the most capable of threatening him. Saw a really good receiving workload, but it's that breakaway threat. If you give him 20 touches a game, he's going to take something to the house every damn week. Kyren Williams, capable as well. Jahmyr Gibbs, because he's my guy. And I do think once you get past there, like the Bijan is probably going to depend on the coach that's hired, and Jonathan Taylor probably is not. You wonder a little bit, or I wonder a little bit, Gladys, maybe you can follow up on this. I've talked myself into the notion that Anthony Richardson is so damn good, he's going to steal some touchdowns. Maybe he'll run a little less. There was a stat I saw. Who had it? I think my boy Zach Kruger, who's fantastic, had a stat out there. Let me just bring it up real quick. In the 2 complete games played by Anthony Richardson, weeks 1 and 4, the Colts had a 64.4% pass rate in neutral game scripts. While it's a small sample size, what are the 7th highest neutral pass rate? Maybe they're going to throw more than we think. I think probably not, and I probably am overthinking this. And I think if I'm playing volume, probably Jonathan Taylor without Zach Moss in the mix is probably going to be a damn good play.
Well, I think Anthony Richardson, I think it'll be like the Baltimore Ravens kind of thing going on. And even when Shane had Jalen Hurts and a healthy Miles Sanders did okay, but Jalen Hurts was still getting the touchdowns. And Anthony Richardson is bigger, and I think he's going to hurt. Not to mention if Zach Moss is still there, yep, you'll have like a kind of smaller sample of a Baltimore Ravens offense.
That's not unreasonable, and I do think with Anthony Richardson, hopefully they do some things. But it's interesting how Shane Steichen has had two distinctly different approaches with the rookie quarterbacks he's worked with. Where Justin Herbert threw the ball more than anybody else in the NFL, that wasn't the case, and so it's like a mix of the two guys. With Jalen Hurts, it was a run-heavy approach. You wonder if there's going to be a little more of an even split there. But Anthony Richardson, I think all the people worried about him not being a good passer should probably. He's maybe not refined yet, but I'm old enough to remember when Josh Allen couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. So apparently that's changed over the course of time. So coaching matters, people. So watch out for that. So there we have. There's our top fives. As we sit right now, things are going to change. Like probably by tomorrow. Because the coaching things, right? And so let's go back to Atlanta. Like, first of all, Bill Belichick seems like that's not happening. It seems like it. I don't want to say it's, ruled out. But, they were talking to pretty much everybody else, having people in for second interviews along the way. At some point, someone's going to wise up and give Raheem Morris a job. I totally agree with everything Les Snead said about him. Like, every player is going to want to play for this guy. They'll be texting him. He'll be tampering endlessly because players love him, right? So we'll see. But, that opening in Atlanta is something we're all eager to see how it gets filled because of the high-end talent that's been languishing there for the last couple of years. I think here's the boss move. Hire Bill Belichick, and he hires Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator. Boom!
Oh, yuck. That's just I would cry.
What's up with Belichick? Are we looking at a universe in which nobody wants him to be their head coach this year?
I don't think it's that nobody wants him to be their head coach. I think that he might want more than today's owners are willing to give. Like, if he wants to make the hiring decisions too on the players, if he wants to make the drafting decisions too on the players, in the last couple of years, his record has not been sterling on that. And if he's sticking to his guns on what he wants, I can see owners not particularly fond of that approach. And I also think there's the element of, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but younger is better. That you get someone in the building who understands today's players, because they're not like yesterday's players at all. And you need that person. And I'm not sure that Belichick is that person. Although I must say that when we did the COVID draft and he had his dog sitting at his computer, that was like the best thing ever. That was like my moment. Yeah. But I think that, especially with why am I blanking on his name? With D'Amico Ryans doing so good in Houston.
Right.
It's that kind of, and Antonio Pierce when he came and he did so well with the Raiders when he came in. You want that type of energy. Harbaugh going to Chargers, great example. Like, you want that guy who can relate to today's players, and I'm not sure that Belichick is that guy. Which brings to the question of Pete Carroll is that guy. So why did Seattle dump him?
Yeah, that was clearly he was not. This was not Pete Carroll's choice, right?
Exactly.
By the way, Belichick says he does not need to buy the groceries. He's fine. He's open to working with things. I kind of agree with what you say. I mean, the Patriot way was great when you were winning a bunch of Super Bowls and Tom Brady was leading the Patriot way, and you were all, everything was hunky dory. I think as soon as things get tough, your ability to relate to today's players becomes more difficult as soon as you're losing. It just does. And so I think that's why, I think Jared Mayo's a great hire there for that reason. Antonio Pierce. Let's talk about Antonio Pierce because I know you're a fan. So I've decided, this is me, I'm Bob Harris. I'm going to be magnanimous. I have decided I will not make fun of Mark Davis's haircut for 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Ooh.
For this hire, which was like low-key making fun of his haircut just by saying that. But
exactly.
I don't care. It's very hard not to make fun of it. But let's talk a little bit about this hire and what you think it means for the Raiders.
I think it's like a two-edged sword. I think it's like that. I think it's a great hire for the Raiders because I think the players wanted it. And I think whenever you can get the players on board with your coach, you're doing good. Like he messed up when he didn't hire the guy that took over for John Gruden. Yeah. What the players wanted him, they didn't get him. The players wanted Pierce. I think Max Crosby was like adamantly adamantly wanting Pierce.
Me.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's on the table if he's not hired, right?
But then on the other side of that, the optimism is so high. What would be considered a winning season for him now? Do you know what I mean? Like when you come in, and if you didn't come in with all this fanfare, with all this player behind you, like if you broke even, it would be a winning season. Now is the bar higher because there was so much fanfare? So I think I love the hire for them. I'm glad he got the job, but I fear that it's going to be that unrealized expectations that people always have when something.
For sure.
Yeah. So, but yeah, as far as, and I love Max Crosby. I think that he's probably one of the most underrated players.
Dude is nuts, man. We are on the 100% the same page. The motor is so high on that guy. Relentless player, and I hope I like to think Aiden Hutchinson seems like he's heading in that direction, but these kind of just like super high motor guys that are relentless dogs. He is just insane, Max Crosby, and I love it. I love watching him. Who is that linebacker they have too? That guy is nuts too. I'm trying to think of how his name is. I don't follow Spillane. Is it Robert Spillane? The guy is insane. He plays crazy football. So love all those kind of players. So the Raiders have some pieces on defense. I think they're going to be, like Antonio Pierce just seems like a guy that Bobby Spillane, Mr. Scampers. Thank you for fixing that up for me. Just watching that guy and Max Crosby, love watching those guys play. So by the way, Andrea's all in on the early quarterback, upside quarterback with the late side. See, Andrea doesn't mess around too. Andrea's winning championships out there left and right. So some of the other, so like I think some of the hot names, like okay, so we have Antonio Pierce in place. We have Brian Callahan going to the Titans. I didn't think a hell of a lot of Brian Callahan. Didn't view him as a high-end, candidate for head coach. I think this is the chase for Steichen, right? That, teams are looking for the next Shane Steichen. He has a pretty good history. He's worked with some really good quarterbacks going back to Peyton Manning in Denver. When Manning first showed up there, he's worked with Matt Stafford in Detroit. Was on board with the Raiders for Derek Carr's 4,000-yard season. And now he's worked with Joe Burrow. Got a little something out of Jake Browning when Joe Burrow was hurt. Can he turn Will Levis into a thing?
Okay, all cards on the table. I was never, ever high on Will Levis, ever. Like, my whole opinion was, like, there were burner accounts, his burner accounts that were, like, lifting him up during draft season, that no one actually thought that he should go in the first round except for him and his burner accounts. Can he make Will Levis a thing? D-Hop stays there. If D-Hop stays there, D-Hop makes everyone look better. Like, he just doesn't – he's just good. He's just that good. Burks, though, not so much. I don't no. The answer is I'm going to go no. I'm going to go with the short answer, no. I think
Treylon Burks, all the dynasty owners of Treylon Burks are going, oh, maybe? No.
I think that Will Levis had that one good game when there was no film on him, and he came in. And once they got film on him,
this happens a lot, people.
Yeah. He became who we thought he was. He's not even a good Josh Allen, like the big quarterback who he doesn't run. He's not a dual threat. He's going to throw the ball because he thinks his arm is a lot better than what it is. Like, he can get the ball downfield, but you're not going to get it between a double coverage unless you have D-Hop. And D-Hop's going to get tired of being smashed because you put him in, like, uncomfortable positions where defensive guys are teeing up on him. So, no, I think Callahan going there wasn't a surprise because I don't think any big name wanted to go there.
Fair point. By the way, there is no mayo in my coffee, people. I'm going unlike Will Levis.
Was it mayo or butter? Didn't he put like butter?
Mayo? He's a mayo guy. Some people do the butter. He does the mayo. And I'm told he eats bananas with the skin on them, which seems very odd as well. But look, man, who am I to judge? I do really weird stuff too.
Why would you do that?
Maybe, I guess. All right, so we had Callahan go there, and I think that, like, I'm not super excited. Talk a little bit about Jared Mayo, though, in New England. We kind of hit on it a little bit. This guy seems like, like they identified him long before.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been the heir apparent, wrote it into his contract. Obviously, a guy that the players relate with very well. Seems like he might keep the young Belichicks around him, too. He gets along with them as well. So, what are your views of this situation, and what do the Patriots? I mean, what can the Patriots do to turn things around beyond the coach?
Quarterback would be good if they could find a quarterback. If they could find a good offensive coordinator, that would be good. I think it's really interesting that he was the heir apparent and no one realized it until, like, that was like probably one of the best well-kept secrets, because the NFL isn't really known for its secretiveness. That was one.
So I actually heard about this when they signed his extension. They mentioned that it was written into his contract. That way, because they can avoid some of the promotions or other teams get scalping them, and also I mean, obviously we comply with the Rooney rules just by interviewing, but they don't have to worry about outside interviews. They can just, if you put that succession plan in place, you can circumvent whatever the rules are or the interview processes are. So I think that's one of the reasons they did it. But I think just to keep them on board because it seemed like they knew the Belichick ship was going to sail at some point.
I think it's a great hire. I think I've heard that he has the Belichick kind of mentality where he is tough on players, but he also has that kind of, I know where you're coming from and I know what to do. And I think the biggest explanation of that is he's keeping the young Belichicks there. Otherwise, they would have gone with the thing. They need a quarterback. They need a quarterback. And they need an offensive coordinator because he's on the defensive side. If they can get I don't think either of those quarterbacks are the answer. I don't know who the answer would be for them. I don't think their offense is good enough for what that division is right now. And I think they will languish probably in third or fourth for a couple of years.
So if we go out and look at the list of free agents, Kirk Cousins, obviously, I think he'll end up staying in Minnesota, but he's available. Baker Mayfield seems likely to remain a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, Jacoby. There's not a lot out there. Let's see. Will Levis's caddy will be available. Ryan Tannehill, Jameis Winston, Tyrod Taylor. I mean, we're down in the, getting into Josh Dobbs territory, and he's very good for 3 games, I'm told.
Yeah, until film gets on him. Yeah,
until they figure
him out. I don't know. They can't go in the draft. I mean, the first.
Should we read too much into the fact that Mac Jones was one of the 5 players to show up for Jared Mayo's press conference? Me.
I think that Mac Jones has learned how to butter his bread. Is that the saying? Well, his bread is butter. So yeah, that was a very smart move on his part. I cannot fault him for that. But yeah.
So let's talk about the vacancies. We've kind of touched on Atlanta. Who would you like to see land in Atlanta?
I would like to see an offensive-minded guy go to Atlanta. I would like to see someone who understands Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, what you have there. Pete Carroll. I would like Pete Carroll to go to Atlanta.
I would be fine with that. So I think Ben Johnson is obviously the hot name among the coordinators that are out there. It seems like, the pre-baked cake has him going to Washington with Commanders. Adam Peters, who they hired as their GM, and the reporting at the time or headed right before that time was, that they hired or made it official on Peters was that, that was their desired outcome. Ben Johnson, to you, I mean, first of all, if Ben Johnson leaves Detroit, how big of a concern is that for you? I think for me, I've kind of talked myself in the notion that this is more of Dan Campbell's team, and he can figure it out with a new coordinator, with the playmakers on hand. you want to dial me back on that or push me off the cliff?
I never push you off the cliff. I think I would like to see Ben Johnson go to Carolina. I think that would be the best outcome for Bryce Young run offense. If he leaves Detroit, I think as long as Dan Campbell's there, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I think he will make a good choice on OC, DC. You have Amon Ra, you have your boy Gibbs, you have Monty, you have Goff. I don't see that team falling off a cliff if Ben Johnson leaves as much as, other teams would, like Pittsburgh, who don't have offensive coordinators and can't find one. I don't think it's going to hurt Detroit, but I think it would help Carolina more than it would help Washington. To me, Washington's like that dead space that it doesn't matter who goes there. They're not going to be fantasy relevant for quite some time. Sorry, Washington.
All right, so
fans.
I mean, Atlanta, we would like to see someone offensive minded go there. We would like to see someone we want someone offensive minded anywhere. Who are we trying to kid? Seattle would be another one. It sounds like Dan Quinn probably a favorite there, but I mean, they've talked to a lot of guys. It's interesting. Some of the coordinators' names that are being floated around out there. Dave Canales, who's a former Seahawks assistant, quarterbacks coach, now with Tampa Bay, is among them. They're a handful. We just saw Shane Waldron, the current coordinator, go to Chicago to see what quarterback he's going to be coaching there. So we'll see. Seattle, though, is one that's of interest to me. I mean, there's some pretty good pieces there for us to be concerned about.
Well, I think I would like to see Raheem Morris go to Seattle because I think that their defense is good. I think Raheem Morris doesn't alleviate that Pete Carroll vibe that they have, and I think that Pete Carroll vibe is what Seattle thrives on. And I think he's a darn good coach. But my whole concern is, do coaches want to go there after what they did to Pete Carroll? Like, is Seattle a place where coaches feel safe?
John Schneider seems to have taken control here, and he talked a little bit about how he's going to have more control over the assistant coaches. Yeah. Maybe that was the sticking point. The gossipy type people would like to say, "Hey, JSC in here breaking news. Jim Harbaugh." Sorry, JSC. I'm dogging you a little bit. We were on that. It kind of came about earlier. And we're excited. I mean, I think I'm legit excited. I mean, Justin Herbert needs the right coach. I think Harbaugh is probably the right coach, if for no other reason than he wins quickly and that he will win with offense more so than Brandon Staley wins with whatever that was he was doing on defense.
Yeah, I mean, that team, they're not a bad team. They're not Washington. They're not a bad team. Like, the games they lost, except for the Vegas game, were games that they should have won or they could have won. Harbaugh, I legitimately think this makes them a contender, unfortunately. I think, because I'm not. But I think that Harbaugh hire makes them a contender. I think as far as elevating teams, I think right now that's the best hire. Although I love the Pierce hire, I think Harbaugh hire is the one that elevates the team that he's on the most right now.
Correct. And I believe, JSC, that is a correct assessment on your part, that he automatically makes them a playoff contender year one.
Yeah.
And all four years he's there, they'll be a playoff contender. Probably get to the Super Bowl right before he leaves.
Right before he walks out the door.
So, I think it's interesting. We talk about the Sean McVay, kind of Kyle Shanahan. That's really the Mike Shanahan tree, right? I mean, all those guys were on the same staff together in Washington, and they've all kind of gone and grown. I mean, all of them. LaFleur was there. I mean, the whole crew. Look, they've developed some since then. There's no doubt about it. What is it about that group? What is it about the mindset of these guys that come off this coaching tree that sets them apart in your estimation?
I think it's their willingness to go outside the box and to adapt their system to the players that they have instead of trying to make the players adapt to a system that they have in their mind. I think that it shows, especially with McVay, willingness to get Stafford instead of and release Goff, who no one saw coming, and then adapt a system that was advantageous. I mean, it helps to have Cooper Kupp, but to adapt a system that that the players can work within. And I think that not enough coaches, like, I honestly think that was a problem with Denver this year, is that the system wasn't adapting to the players that they had, but he was trying to make them adapt to his system. And I think that these guys, the Shanahans and the McVays and the LaFleur with Love, they're adapting, they're playing to their players' strengths instead of trying to make the players play to the strength of their coaching abilities. And that's the Indianapolis. Like, you had Anthony Richardson, and then he goes down. Gardner Minshew takes you to almost the playoffs. Two totally different quarterbacks. You had to adapt that system to what Gardner Minshew could do. He's not Anthony Richardson. He's
right. I mentioned it with Steichen. I mean, two different distinctive different approaches with two different quarterbacks, with Justin Herbert the rookie year and Jalen Hurts his first year. It was totally opposite approaches. And that is the kind of mindset you're looking for. I think that's why there's a lot of teams out there looking for their Shane Steichen. Yeah. I want to say too, like, if you're trying to identify why coaches succeeded and why they failed, the incoming coaches, why some have great success. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead back and offer my apologies to Jonathan Gannon once again. I felt like he was a huge miss. That was a huge miss on my part. Watching how hard the Cardinals were horrible. They played hard as hell. And for a team that I thought was totally checked out on him early in the season, they totally were not checked out on him. And he kept them going, kept them motivated. And I'm eager to see where this goes going forward, especially with a fully healthy Kyler Murray, who, by the way, apparently can run something not called an air raid offense. I mean, I thought for a guy that's done that since high school, he came in and Drew Petzing's offense. I thought he looked pretty good in that offense.
Yeah. I mean, I think Gannon didn't do himself any service either, like on his exit out of Philly, and then his first couple of he didn't do himself any favors, and maybe it was like that crazy ploy. Well, I'm going to show this side, but I'm this side. That team overplayed what I thought they would do. I mean, I honestly thought they would be really, really bad, and they weren't. They played for him. And I like Kyler Murray. I'm sorry I didn't mention him as one of the quarterbacks that I would take.
Right.
But Kyler Murray's up there too. Yeah. But
by the way, I want to say hi to my colleague Jeff Bell in there. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. Yeah, Gannon was. I agree with Dane. Gannon was a major surprise out of all the coaches. I think that he was the biggest surprise.
It was that horrible video early in the season where we were sitting there giving that fiery talk, and everyone's just sitting there. Rolling their eyes, going, oh my God, what are you doing? I called it a hostage video. It was like, oh man, what are we here for? Oh,
why is this happening to us? Why is this happening? Yeah, that's
we'll see. We'll see which of these coaches hit. If you guys have any comments or questions, we've got a few more minutes here with Gladys Louise Tyler, fantastic guest who will be back on the regular. Gotta get her back on the radio too. So
what do you hear
on the two? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You can hear on the 2 Point Conversion podcast, writing for Razzball, all kinds of places all off season and around these parts too. So go ahead. What were you going to say, Gladys?
Philadelphia Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think should be their OC?
Well, like number one, they just got like 90% better by bringing Vic Fangio in. I don't know what the hell the meltdown was in Miami. That was like sudden and unexpected. Just wasn't working. But I am like I don't think Cliff Kingsbury's the answer. That's
okay. Thank you.
I feel like that's the starting point.
Right.
I don't feel like it should be Cliff Kingsbury. And so once we get past that, I think there's a handful of candidates, and I don't have a good feeling about any of them with Nick Sirianni. I just don't. Well, do you have a preferred candidate?
No, I just didn't want it to be Cliff Kingsbury. I just don't. I don't think that Cliff Kingsbury is the answer for Jalen Hurts. Wait, is Fangio for sure the DC now? Did they offer him the job?
I mean, that's all the reporting is. Like, the deal is about done with him going there. He was there kind of with them.
The Super Bowl, right? He was like their special advisor.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so Fangio's defense in Miami, like there were grumblings that the players didn't like the system, the scheme that they were put in.
Once they learned it, though, it was pretty good.
It was pretty good it was pretty. Yeah, it was okay, and he had good players. He had really good players.
Really good players, for sure.
Really good players, especially in that secondary. But I don't know that like Philly's defense was just bad, but they lost a lot of secondary. Like they lost their secondary, and I don't think people understood that. I don't think people gave them the benefit of that. Like they lost their secondary that was so good, and then you
also, I mean, the expectations coming off. I mean, did everybody think they were going to have 4 double-digit sack guys again? I mean, like,
yeah,
the expectations might not have been realistic.
And I think the 10 when they were 10-1, it wasn't a convincing 10-1. Like you weren't saying, oh my, these guys are Super Bowl bound again. It was always questions as to how are they winning these games. So it was never that they were the meltdown. I don't think was as big as people gave it to be. That the expectations is what caused the meltdown to look as bad as it did. Like they just weren't that great a team from the get-go. And I think Jalen Hurts having just another coordinator, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. Another OC coordinator, I just hope it's not Cliff Kingsbury. I don't think that the air raid type of offense, his offense in Arizona when he was head coach was the same. It didn't matter if they were behind. It didn't matter if they were ahead.
Right.
He just played the same offense, and that's not going to work.
Everyone lined up in the same spot. There
exactly.
was no. It was like what is this?
Why? This isn't college. Yeah, thank you. This isn't college anymore. And has he learned his lesson? Maybe, but I don't want that trial period to be in Philly.
Super predictable offense was not a good fit there. So we'll see if it's a fit elsewhere. Just quickly, one last note, like Carolina Panthers, what do you think of Bryce Young? And what do you think of working for David Tepper? I mean, is he going to have trouble getting somebody, or is it, I mean, like, there's 32 jobs. Like somebody's going to want it, obviously, but it seems like this is taking a bit of time, and I don't see like a mad scramble to get there. Maybe Mike Vrabel's the latest name I've heard mentioned. Do you have any thoughts about that one?
I think that I think that Bryce Young, again, number 1 pick, came in with high expectations. I don't think he's a bust. I think it's too early to say that he's a bust. It's like his first year in the league. It used to be where quarterbacks could sit behind a really good quarterback and learn. He was thrown right in, and he was thrown right in with not the best supporting cast to be thrown in with.
Great run blocking offensive line really helped him out.
It really helped him out. I think they're going to have a hard time getting a coach there. I think they're going to have a Vrabel. Michael, I think Vrabel's a great coach. I think he's a great defensive coach. That's not going to help Bryce Young any. So right. I think it just depends on who they can get there. I don't think anyone wants to work for Tepper. I don't. I wouldn't. I mean,
he's a little impetuous.
Slightly.
That's a nice way of saying other words that I'm not going to say.
Exactly.
Like this is just like, look, man, you don't get to be that guy by being a patient, pleasant individual, I'm guessing, but whatever. So all right, we'll call it a night with that, and we'll do this again when all the jobs are filled and we can discuss them more fully and have a better idea of what we think about some of the players and pieces involved in all of that. I would like to thank you, Gladys Louise Tyler, for coming on the show. Everyone should follow her on Twitter at Gladys L. Tyler, Gladys with a Y, as it's supposed to be spelled. Everyone knows that. And you can find her work at Razzball and also catch her on the 2 Point Conversion podcast. I'm told that is fantastic stuff. And going for 2 live. That's the numeral 2, going for 2 live. And again, find her work at Razzball. And you will catch her here again and probably on the Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio Show. Listen to that, people, all week long. I'll be on tomorrow night, Thursday at 10 to midnight, Friday 10 to midnight, Saturday 3 to 5. back again Monday, 10 to midnight. We'll be doing that through the Super Bowl. We'll have a Super Bowl pregame show too. Me and Dempsey will be
that's awesome.
spouting off about prop bets with all the hosts on the network coming on to tell us what they think. So nothing but fun there. Thanks, everybody. We will see you here Saturday, noon Eastern time for the Ask Me Anything live stream. Thanks, Campers. Thanks, Dame. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate y'all. See you next time. Bye.
Appreciate you guys. Bye. Thank you.